I sat in that attorney's office holding my grandfather's hammer like it was the only solid thing left in the world. The wood was smooth from 3 generations of Miller hands, and carved into the handle were the words that had defined my family since 1952. We build to last. The attorney, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, who'd handled my mother's estate, cleared her throat. Around the table sat my wife Sarah, our son Jake, Sarah's mother Linda, and Pastor Grant. Mom had been specific about who needed to be present for this part of the will reading. And now, Mrs. Patterson said, adjusting her glasses, a sealed letter to Thomas Miller to be read aloud per Dorothy Miller's explicit instructions. She handed me an envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Sarah reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I'd been doing that a lot in the 2 weeks since Mom died, not touching, not talking much, just working and trying to breathe through the grief. Thomas can read it himself, Sarah said quietly. No. Mrs. Patterson's voice was firm. Dorothy was clear. It must be read aloud. I unfolded the letter. Mom's handwriting, neat, precise. The penmanship of a woman who'd spent 40 years as a legal secretary filled 3 pages. I started reading. Thomas, my dear boy, I have carried a terrible weight for 20 years. I need to tell you before I face my judgment. My throat tightened, but I kept going. When Jake was born, your father was suspicious. He never said why, but I knew Robert. He'd been a Marine. He noticed details that others missed. He asked me to arrange a DNA test quietly. He said he didn't want to upset you if he was wrong. I thought he was being paranoid, but I did it to put his mind to rest. The room had gone completely silent. I could feel Jake staring at me, could hear Sarah's breathing change. The results came back. Robert was right. Jake is not your biological son. The hammer slipped from my grip, hit the floor with a dull thud. Jake's voice cracked. What? I couldn't look at him, couldn't look at anyone. I kept reading, my voice mechanical. Your father wanted to tell you immediately. We had the worst fight of our marriage. I begged him to wait. You were so happy with your new baby, and Sarah seemed like she'd learned her lesson from her mistake. Robert said, Dorothy, you can't build a life on a lie. It'll collapse. I said, or we can let them have their happiness. He was going to tell you the next day, but he died that morning in the construction accident. And I made a choice. I hid the DNA test. I told myself it was to protect you, to protect Jake. But maybe I was protecting myself from admitting I'd been too cowardly to support Robert's honesty. Sarah was crying, not the quiet, dignified tears from Mom's funeral, loud, gasping sobs. Thomas, she started. I held up my hand and finished the letter. I have enclosed the original DNA test results. Sarah knew about the affair. She knew there was a chance Jake wasn't yours. When I told her about the test results, she agreed to hide them. We convinced ourselves we were doing it for you, for Jake, but we were doing it for ourselves. I'm sorry, my son. I'm so sorry. You deserve the truth. You deserve to build your life on solid ground, not sand. I love you. I'm so proud of the man you became despite my cowardice. Please forgive me. Please forgive yourself for whatever you feel now. And please, please remember, family is who you choose, not who chooses you. Love, Mom. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mrs. Patterson slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was a lab report from 20 years ago. Clear as day. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. How long did you know? My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like something carved from stone. Sarah's face was blotchy and red. Thomas, please, I can explain. How long? Since before he was born. She was whispering now. I made a mistake. It was one time. It was 20 years ago. Who's his father? She looked at Jake, at her mother, at Pastor Grant. Anywhere but at me. Sarah. My hands were fists on the table. Who is Jake's biological father? It doesn't matter, Linda interrupted. Thomas, this is ancient history. You can't possibly... Who? Sarah's voice was barely audible. Someone from the school. It doesn't matter. You're Jake's real father. You raised him. I stood. The chair scraped against the floor. I picked up the hammer and walked toward the door. Dad? Jake's voice stopped me. Dad, wait, what does this mean? I turned and looked at him. Really looked at him. 18 years old, 6'2", broad shoulders. heading to Penn State on a football scholarship in August. The boy I'd driven to practice 6 days a week for 6 years. The boy I'd taught to swing this very hammer before he could ride a bike. The boy I'd loved more than my own life. The boy who wasn't mine. I don't know, Jake. My voice cracked. I don't know what it means. I walked out. In my truck, I sat with the engine off and the hammer on the passenger seat. My phone buzzed. Text from Jake. Dad, please come back. Another buzz. Sarah. Thomas, we need to talk about this at home, please. I looked at the hammer, at those 5 words carved into the handle. We build to last. 3 weeks ago, before Mom's cancer took her, before this bomb exploded my life, Jake and I had spent Saturday morning in my workshop like we did most Saturdays. He was working on a practice board, trying to carve his initials. Dad, he'd said, guiding the chisel carefully, Coach Reynolds told me he's never seen a player with my work ethic. I learned that from you. I'd put my hand over his, helping him control the blade. Miller men don't quit. We build to last, son. He'd smiled. We build to last. Sitting in that parking lot, I watched Sarah run out of the law office, Jake behind her. She banged on my window. Thomas, please. Let's talk about this at home. Let's be calm. I rolled down the window an inch. Is it true? It was a mistake. It was 20 years ago. It doesn't change. Who is his father, Sarah? She hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. She knew exactly who. It doesn't matter, she said. You're his real father. You've been his father for 18 years. That's what matters. I started the truck. Where are you going? Her voice was rising, panic setting in. I don't know. Thomas, please, think about Jake. Think about our family. I looked at her through the window. This woman I'd been married to for 20 years. This woman who'd lied to me every single day. I raised another man's son for 18 years, I said quietly. You're right. That makes me his real father. But you're a stranger. I drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw Jake standing on the sidewalk, watching me go. If you've ever had the floor drop out from under you, you know what I'm talking about. 1 minute, you're a father of 18 years. The next, you're a fool who believed a lie. But here's the thing, nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your history. Every memory I had with Jake, every moment from his birth to yesterday, I was going to have to look at them all over again, through a different lens, through the truth. I drove to the community center job site. The building was half finished, scheduled to open in 2 weeks. I was the lead contractor. Miller Construction had built half the important buildings in this town over 3 generations. We had a reputation, quality work, finished on time, built to last. I couldn't fall apart yet. The town was counting on me. Miller men don't quit, but God, I wanted to. For 48 hours, I lived at the job site, worked 16-hour days, ate from the vending machine at the gas station, slept in my truck, didn't answer calls from Sarah, answered Jake's texts with 1-word responses, avoided everyone. On the 3rd night, Marcus Webb found me. Marcus and I had gone to high school together, started our contracting businesses the same year, bid against each other on jobs, and grabbed beers when one of us won. He was the closest thing I had to a best friend. He showed up at the site around 8 p.m. with 2 coffees and a bag of donuts. You planning on living here? He climbed the scaffolding and sat beside me. I was installing crown molding, focused, precise, controlled, just trying to finish the job. Haven't seen you blink in about 5 minutes. He handed me coffee. Talk to me. Nothing to talk about. Your wife cheated, your mom lied, and your son isn't yours. That's not nothing. I set down the nail gun, took the coffee, drank half of it in one swallow. Jake's my son, I said. DNA doesn't change 18 years. Damn right it doesn't. But it does though, doesn't it? He's got another man's eyes, another man's blood. How did I not see it? Because you saw what mattered. You saw your kid. I gripped the coffee cup so hard the lid popped off. I drove him to practice, 6 days a week, 6 years. I taught him to swing a hammer before he could ride a bike, and it was all built on a lie. The lie isn't yours, Thomas. Sarah lied. Your mom lied. You loved your son. That's not a lie. Isn't it? If you'd known, you still would have loved him. Because that's who you are. I wanted to believe him. But sitting there in the half-finished building, surrounded by sawdust and the smell of fresh lumber, All I could feel was hollow. My phone buzzed. Sarah calling for the 20th time. I declined it. "You gonna talk to her eventually?" Marcus asked. "What's there to say?" "I don't know. Maybe ask who the father is." "I know who he is." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" "Has to be someone from the school, someone Jake would have been around, someone Sarah had access to during parent-teacher stuff." I was piecing it together, the way you piece together a building from blueprints. "My guess? David Peterson. The English teacher? Jake had him for 7th grade. Sarah volunteered for class parties that year, was on the parent-teacher committee, came home late from meetings a lot." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I thought she was being a good mom, getting involved." "Jesus, Thomas." "Yeah." We sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus said, "What are you gonna do? Finish this job, then figure out the rest." But the rest was already figuring itself out without me. The next morning, I went to the hardware store for supplies. Small town, so everyone knew everyone's business. I felt the stares the second I walked in, heard the whispers. 2 women in the paint aisle stopped talking when I passed. One of them, Betty Marsh, whose kitchen I'd remodeled 3 years ago, gave me a look that could freeze hell. "Some people," she muttered to her friend, "walk out on their own son over a piece of paper." At the diner that afternoon, the waitress, a high school girl named Emma, who Jake used to tutor in math, was cold. "Coffee?" She didn't make eye contact. "Please." She poured it and walked away. Didn't ask if I wanted food, didn't ask about Jake, just ice. At the register, I heard her talking to the cook. "Sarah comes in crying every day. That poor boy is devastated." I paid and left. Sarah's narrative had taken hold. I was the villain. The man who abandoned his son because of a DNA test. Never mind that Sarah had lied for 18 years. Never mind that my mother had betrayed me from beyond the grave. Never mind that my whole life had been a carefully constructed fiction. I was the bad guy because I needed space to breathe. That evening, Sarah's mother, Linda, showed up at the job site. She marched across the sawdust-covered floor in her church shoes and planted herself in front of me. "You're punishing an innocent child," she said without preamble, "because you're too proud to forgive." I set down the drill. "Jake is innocent. This isn't about him." "Isn't it? You moved out. You won't return calls. You're breaking his heart. I forgave Jake the second I found out. He's innocent in this. But Sarah? Your daughter destroyed this family." Linda's face went hard. "She made a mistake 20 years ago. One mistake. And you're going to throw away a marriage and hurt Jake because of it?" "One mistake?" I laughed. "She lied to me every day for 18 years. Every time she looked at Jake. Every time I signed a report card, paid for football equipment, drove to away games. Every single day was a lie. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest, something your daughter never was. She was protecting you." "No." I stepped closer. She was protecting herself. From consequences. From losing the comfortable life she built on my labor, my money, my love. Don't dress it up as noble. It was selfish. Linda's eyes filled with tears. "That boy worships you. Do you know what it's doing to him, watching you walk away?" That hit. That landed right in the center of my chest. I'm not walking away from Jake. Then what do you call this? I call it trying to survive. My voice cracked. I call it trying to figure out who I am when everything I thought was true turns out to be a lie. Linda left without another word. That night, Jake came to find me. I was working late, again, when I heard the echo of cleats on concrete. He walked onto the site, still in his practice gear, mud on his knees, helmet in hand. "Dad." I turned, saw him standing there. My son, not my son. My son. "You look tired," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. "Coach says I've been off all week. Can we talk?" "What do you want to talk about?" He came closer, set his helmet down on a stack of lumber. "Are you still my dad?" The question nearly dropped me. "Jake, because Mom says you're going to leave. She says you don't want me anymore because of the test." "That's not..." I took a breath, started over. "Jake, I've loved you since the day you were born. That doesn't just stop. Then why won't you come home? Why won't you look at me?" The honest answer was too cruel, but he deserved honesty. Mom and Sarah had denied him that for 18 years. "Because every time I look at you," I said slowly, "I see 18 years of a lie. and I know that's not fair to you. You didn't ask for this, but I need time." His face did something complicated, hurt and anger mixing together. "Time? I'm leaving for Penn State in August. How much time do you need?" "I don't know. That's not good enough. It's all I've got right now." Jake picked up his helmet. His jaw was tight, the way it got before big games when he was nervous but wouldn't admit it. "Mom was right," he said quietly. "You only loved me when you thought I was yours." He walked away before I could respond, before I could tell him that was wrong, that I loved him more than anything, that this wasn't about him, but maybe it was about him. Maybe everything was about him. And maybe I was failing him by not being stronger, faster, better at processing this nightmare. I stood there in the empty building, surrounded by half-finished walls, and wondered if I was building something that would last, or just building another lie. The next day, David Peterson came to find me. I was on the roof, checking the flashing around the chimney, when I heard someone call my name. I looked down, and there he was, khakis and a button down, salt and pepper hair, the kind of guy who probably read The New Yorker and thought he was smarter than everyone else. I climbed down the ladder, stood in front of him, waited. "Thomas." He extended his hand. "I think we need to talk." I didn't take the hand. "About?" "About Jake, about the situation." "You mean about how you slept with my wife?" He dropped his hand, had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It wasn't like that." "No. What was it like?" "Sarah and I, we had a connection. It happened during parent-teacher conferences, and then you were Jake's teacher. She was his mother. He was 12 years old. Jake was never in my class when Sarah and I were together. He was your student. You were his teacher, and you were screwing his mother." I took a step closer. "Tell me how that's supposed to work. How you look a kid in the eye, help him with his essay, then go sleep with his mom?" Peterson's face flushed. "I'm not here to argue about the past. I'm here because I have a right to know my son." "Your son? You've had 18 years. Where were you?" "I didn't know. Sarah told me she handled it, that you were—" He stopped, regrouped. "Look, the point is I know now, and I want a relationship with Jake. Did Sarah tell you, or did you figure it out when my mother's will got read?" He didn't answer, didn't have to. "Get off my job site," I said. "You can't keep me from him. I'm his biological father. I have rights." "Rights? You want to talk about rights? You had the right to be honest 18 years ago. You had the right to step up when he was born, when he was learning to walk, when he was getting bullied in elementary school. You had the right to drive him to practice, teach him to throw a spiral, sit through 3-hour games in the rain." I was close enough now to see the sweat on his forehead. "But you didn't do any of that," I continued, "because you're not a father. You're a sperm donor who wants credit for my work. So take your rights and get the hell off my property before I forget that I'm trying to be a good example for my son." Peterson left, but the damage was done. He'd said the quiet part out loud. He wanted Jake, and he had biology on his side. That night, I parked outside my own house. Our house. The house I'd built with my own hands 7 years ago. I could see through the living room window. Sarah, Jake, and Peterson sat at the dining room table, together, talking, laughing even. They looked like a family. And I was outside in the dark, looking in like some kind of ghost. 20 years ago, that man slept with my wife, and now he was sitting in my house, with my son, building the relationship I'd had for 18 years. The worst part? I couldn't even say Jake was mine, not by blood, maybe not by choice if Sarah and Peterson got their way. I considered going in. My hand was on the door handle. I watched Jake laugh at something Peterson said. I drove away instead. The next morning, a process server found me at the job site. Divorce papers. Sarah was filing, requesting full custody of Jake, even though he was 18 and technically didn't need custody, and demanding I pay back child support. For 18 years, for raising another man's son. The nerve of it nearly made me laugh. There was a second set of papers. David Peterson, filing for parental rights, requesting formal custody time, back pay for missed years of fatherhood, and legal recognition as Jake's father. Marcus found me sitting on a stack of drywall, papers in hand, looking at nothing. "What's that?" I handed him the documents. He read them, swore, read them again. "They want you to pay for raising another man's kid?" "Yep." "And now that man wants to take him away?" "Yep." "What are you going to do?" I looked at the grandfather's hammer sitting on my tool belt. at those 5 words carved into the handle. I don't know. My dad would have known. He always knew the right thing to do. What would he say? I ran my thumb over the inscription. He'd say, measure twice, cut once. Make sure you know the truth before you act. You know the truth now? Do I? I know Jake isn't my biological son. I know Sarah lied. I know Peterson's a piece of work. But I don't know why my mom really hid it. I don't know what my dad was thinking before he died. I don't know the whole story. Does that matter? Yeah, it matters. Because if I'm going to fight for Jake, and I am going to fight for him, I need to understand what I'm fighting against, and why. Marcus studied me. You're going back to your mom's place, aren't you, to look through her stuff? Yeah. Want company? No, this is something I need to do alone. Mom's house felt wrong, without her in it. I'd been avoiding it since the funeral, letting Sarah and Linda handle the estate stuff. But now I needed answers. I went straight to her bedroom, opened her closet, and there, on the top shelf behind her winter coats, was a wooden box with a small padlock. The key was in her jewelry box. She'd never been creative with hiding spots. Inside the locked box, the original DNA test, a stack of letters in her handwriting, diary-style entries addressed to no one, and a leather-bound journal I recognized immediately, my father's journal, the one he'd kept since Vietnam. I sat on the floor and started reading. The letters were dated, starting 20 years ago. Mom's voice in my head as I read, June 15th. Robert was suspicious from the moment he saw Jake. He never said why, but I knew my husband. He'd been a Marine. He noticed things, details. He asked me to get a DNA test done quietly, said he didn't want to upset Thomas if he was wrong. I thought he was being paranoid, but I did it to put his mind to rest. I kept reading. June 22nd, the results came. Robert was right. Jake isn't Thomas's biological son. Robert wanted to tell Thomas immediately. We had a terrible fight, the worst in our marriage. I begged him to wait. Thomas was so happy with his new baby, and Sarah seemed like she'd learned her lesson. She'd confessed the affair to me, claimed it was over. Robert said, Dorothy, you can't build a life on a lie. It'll collapse. I said, or we can let them have their happiness. He was going to tell Thomas the next day. My hands were shaking. June 23rd, Robert died this morning. Construction accident at the mill project. He never got to tell Thomas. And I made a choice. I hid the DNA test. I told myself it was to protect Thomas, to protect Jake. But maybe I was protecting myself from admitting I'd been too cowardly to support Robert's honesty. Maybe I was protecting myself from being the one to break my son's heart. I set the letters down, opened my father's journal. His handwriting was messier than Mom's, more utilitarian. He'd written in it sporadically, not every day, just when something weighed on him. I found the entry from June. June 20th, watched Thomas with baby Jake today. He's a natural father, makes me proud. But something's not right. The timing of Sarah's pregnancy, the way she avoids eye contact when I ask about the due date, the way Linda gets defensive when I'm around. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But Miller men don't ignore the truth just because it's hard. Measure twice, cut once applies to life too. I need to be sure before I say anything. Dorothy's arranging a DNA test. I should know by next week. Next entry, dated June 22nd. Got the results. I was right. I wish to God I wasn't. Tomorrow I tell Thomas. It'll destroy him. But raising a child on a lie destroys him worse, just slower. He deserves to build his life on truth. That's what we do. We build to last. Final entry, morning of June 23rd. Heading to the mill site. Big beam installation today. Dicey work. We'll talk to Thomas tonight. Lord, give me the words. Note to self. Pass the hammer to Thomas this weekend. He's ready. 3rd generation. He'll build something that lasts. He died that afternoon. Beam fell during installation. Crushed him instantly. I closed the journal, pressed my palms against my eyes, tried to breathe. My father had known the truth, had been coming to tell me, had died before he could, and Mom, in her grief and fear, had made the choice to bury it. I remembered the day she gave me the hammer. It was a week after the funeral. I was 25 years old, new father, drowning in grief and responsibility. She'd found me in Dad's workshop, sitting on the floor, holding one of his favorite chisels. Thomas. Her voice was gentle. I have something for you. She handed me a cloth-wrapped bundle. I opened it. The hammer, grandfather's hammer, worn smooth by decades of work. Dad wanted you to have this, she said. He was going to give it to you this weekend. He said that? When? The morning She couldn't finish. Before the accident. He said you were ready. I held the hammer. Ran my fingers over the inscription. We build to last. R. Miller Sr., 1952. I'm not ready, Mom. I don't know how to do this without him. She put her arms around me. He taught you everything you need to know. You build like he did, with integrity, with care. You make things that last. Did he say anything else? About Jake? About me being a father? She hesitated, just for a moment. Then, he said he was proud of you, and that he loved Jake. Sitting on her bedroom floor 20 years later, I finally understood. She'd lied to me that day too. My father's last words weren't about pride or love. His last words were probably about the DNA test, about how I deserved the truth. But she'd taken that from me, given me a false memory to carry for 2 decades. I opened the last letter she'd written, the one dated 3 days before she died. Thomas, I'm dying, and I can't meet my husband in the next life carrying this lie. Your father was right. I was wrong. I stole 20 years of truth from you. I let you love Jake without knowing. Let you trust Sarah without knowing. I thought I was building a family. But I built it on sand, and your father knew. We build to last, or we don't build at all. I'm sorry I wasn't as brave as him. I hope you can be. Tell Jake the truth. Let him choose. That's what family really is. Choice, not blood. I love you. I'm so proud of the man you became despite my cowardice. I sat there on the floor until the sun went down, read through Dad's journal cover to cover, found entries from his time in Vietnam, from building his first house, from the day I was born. One entry stood out, from when I was 10 years old. Took Thomas to the job site today, taught him to use the level. He kept checking and rechecking, making sure everything was perfect. I told him, measure twice, cut once, son. If you're not sure, check again. Never build on assumptions. He looked up at me with those serious eyes and said, "What if you're wrong, Dad?" I said, "Then you own it, fix it, and do better next time. But you never, ever pretend you got it right when you didn't. That's how buildings fall down. That's how lives fall apart." That was my father. Truth above comfort. Integrity above ease. Mom had tried to do the opposite. Comfort above truth. Ease above integrity. And look where it got us. I gathered the letters, the journal, the DNA test, put them back in the box, stood in Mom's empty house, and made a decision. My father had wanted me to know the truth so I could make a real choice. Mom had taken that from me, but now I knew. Now I could decide what to build. I went to the workshop, my workshop, separate from the house, and looked at the blueprints on the wall. 3 generations of Miller projects mapped and framed, grandfather's town hall, father's library, my community center, my houses, my life's work. We build to last. But you can't build anything real on lies. Sarah and Mom had tried, and look where it got us. Broken, scattered, fighting in court over a boy who never asked for any of this. If I was going to build something new, a real family with real trust, it had to start with truth. My phone rang. Jake. I stared at the screen, Father's journal open in front of me, the hammer on the workbench. I didn't answer. Jake texted, "Peterson wants to take me to visit Penn State this weekend. Mom says it's good for me to know him. What do you think?" I typed and deleted several responses. Finally settled on, "It's your choice, Jake. I'll support whatever you decide." His response came fast. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" I said out loud to the empty workshop, "No, but I don't know how to say the rest yet." How do you tell your son, not your son, that you're drowning? That you're trying to be strong, but you're barely holding on? That you love him so much it's ripping you apart, but you need space to figure out who you are when everything you thought was true turns out to be fiction? How do you build a future when your past just collapsed? I didn't have answers, but I had Dad's journal. I had his philosophy: measure twice, cut once, know the truth before you act. And I had time, not much, but enough to figure out what I was really building here. Enough to decide if I was going to let the lies win, or if I was going to build something that actually lasted. 3 weeks passed. I lived at the job site, slept in my truck, showered at the gym, worked 18-hour days. The community center was nearly done. just detail work left. On Saturday morning, what used to be woodworking day with Jake, I was finishing trim in the main hall when I heard footsteps, a woman's voice. "Pastor Grant said you've been here every Saturday. Thought you could use a break." I turned. She was maybe late 30s, pretty in an understated way, holding a tray with 2 lemonades and a bag from the bakery. Next to her was a boy, maybe 10 years old, with curious eyes and a Batman backpack. "I'm Rachel Bennett," she said. "Third grade teacher. This is my son, Ethan. We just moved here. I'm setting up my classroom. Heard you're building the new reading nook?" "Yeah, should be done next week. We brought sustenance." She set the tray on a sawhorse. "Also a thank you. The reading nook is beautiful. The kids are going to love it." I took a lemonade. "Just doing my job." Ethan was staring at my tool belt. "Are you a builder?" "Carpenter. 3rd generation." "What's that mean?" "Means my grandpa was a carpenter, my dad was a carpenter, and I'm a carpenter. My dad died." He said it matter of fact, the way kids do. "He was a teacher, like Mom." Rachel's smile tightened. 3 years ago, cancer." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Ethan looked at the wooden beams, the crown molding, the careful joinery. "Can I help you build something?" The question caught me off guard. I started to say no. I didn't have time, didn't have energy, didn't have anything left to give. But Rachel was looking at me with something like understanding, and Ethan was looking at me with something like hope. "You ever hold a hammer?" I heard myself ask. "No, sir." "Well, come on then." I had a practice board, scrap wood I used for testing angles and techniques. I showed Ethan how to grip the hammer, how to stand, how to tap a nail once to set it, then follow through with smooth, steady hits. "Not too hard," I said. "Let the hammer do the work." He tried. Bent the nail, looked up at me with panic. I messed it up. For a second, just a flash, I saw Jake, age 6. Same panic, same bent nail, same fear of disappointing me. "That's why we practice," I said, gentler than I'd been in weeks. "Here, try again." He did. This time the nail went in straight. He turned to me with a smile so big it hurt to look at. "I did it!" "You're a natural." Rachel was watching from the doorway. When our eyes met, she mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded, turned back to Ethan. "Want to try another?" We spent an hour like that, me teaching, him learning, Rachel working on something in the corner, giving us space but staying close. When they left, Ethan shook my hand, very formal, very serious. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. Can I come back?" "Sure." After they were gone, I sat on the scaffolding and realized something. I'd smiled. For the first time in 3 weeks, I'd smiled and meant it. The next day, Jake and Peterson went to Penn State together. I knew because Jake texted me photos. The stadium, the dorms, the football facilities. Each photo had a caption. Pretty cool, right? And Peterson says he wants to help pay for textbooks. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? "I'm glad your biological father is suddenly playing dad after 18 years. But that night, Jake and Peterson went to dinner. I know because Marcus saw them at the Italian place downtown and texted me. "They're at Angelo's. Looks awkward as hell. Kid keeps checking his phone." I didn't go, didn't crash it, didn't make a scene. I went to the gym, lifted until I couldn't feel anything. Came back to the job site and kept working. Around 10 p.m., I got a text from Jake. "You awake?" Me, "Yeah." Jake, "Can we talk?" Not over text, for real. Me, "When?" Jake, "Tomorrow, workshop, our spot." The place we'd spent 100 Saturday mornings working on projects, talking about life, being father and son. Me, "I'll be there." Sunday morning. I got to the workshop early, made coffee, stood there holding a mug and wondering what the hell I was going to say. Jake showed up at 8, let himself in, stood in the doorway looking lost. Hey. Long silence. The kind that used to be comfortable but now felt like broken glass. Jake finally said, "I've been spending time with Peterson. David, he wants me to call him David." I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug. "How's that going?" "It's weird. He tries so hard. Tells me about his life, his job, his favorite books. But it's like talking to a stranger who happens to look like me. He's trying to make up for lost time." "Yeah, but you can't make up 18 years in 3 months." Jake moved to the workbench, ran his hand along the wood grain. It doesn't work like that. No, it doesn't. He doesn't know me. Doesn't know I like pineapple on pizza, or that I can't sleep before big games, or that I count ceiling tiles when I'm anxious. You know all that. I did. I knew everything about him. Every fear, every dream, every stupid habit. Mom says I should give him a chance, that he's my real dad. The words hit like a physical blow. Real dad. As if I'd been playing pretend for 18 years. Biology is real, Jake. I can't change that. But you're real too. The way you taught me to throw a spiral. The way you drove me to practice even when you were exhausted. The way you'd wake up early to make me breakfast before school. That's real. My throat was tight. I took a drink of coffee to buy time. I don't know how to do this, Jake said, his voice cracked. I don't know how to have two dads, and I don't know how to choose. I would never ask you to choose. But Mom and Peterson are. They want me to. He stopped, started over. Mom says if you were a real father, you'd fight for me, but you haven't. You just left. That landed. That cut deep. I didn't leave you, Jake. I left a lie. But you're right. I should have fought harder to explain that. I'm sorry. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Are you coming to my graduation? Do you want me there? Yeah, I do. Then I'll be there. He picked up a piece of scrap wood, started sanding it, just for something to do with his hands. What are you working on? He nodded toward a half-finished project in the corner. Toy chest, for a friend's kid. It's nice. He ran his hand over the smooth edge. Is that the hammer? Grandpa's hammer? Yeah. I remember when you taught me with that. I was like 7, 6. You were so small you could barely lift it. He smiled, just a little. I wanted to be like you so bad. You are like me. You work hard. You don't quit. You've got integrity. I don't know. I feel like I'm betraying you if I spend time with Peterson, and betraying him if I don't. I set down my coffee, looked at my son. Not my son. My son. Jake, listen to me. Family isn't about betrayal or loyalty tests. It's about love, and I love you. That doesn't change based on who else you spend time with. His eyes were wet. I love you too, Dad. Dad? He called me Dad. We hugged, both of us crying, holding on like we were drowning, and the other was the only solid thing in the world. We're gonna figure this out, I said. I don't know how yet, but we will. When he left, I felt lighter, not fixed, not healed, but lighter, for about 12 hours. Then I got served. The papers came on Monday morning, hand-delivered by a process server who looked apologetic. Sarah and Peterson were filing for joint custody, even though Jake was 18 and didn't legally need custody. They were claiming I owed Peterson for lost parenting time, 18 years of it. They were demanding I reimburse them for child support I'd fraudulently paid. The legal theory was twisted but clever. Since Jake wasn't my biological son, I had no legal obligation to support him. Therefore, any money I'd spent was either a gift or a fraud, depending on how you framed it. And since Peterson was the biological father, I'd denied him his parental rights and owed him restitution. It was insane. It was infuriating. It was also probably not going to hold up in court, but they were trying. Marcus found me sitting on a stack of drywall, papers in hand. Let me guess, legal bomb? I handed him the documents. He read, swore, read again. They want you to pay them for raising Jake? Yep. After Sarah lied for 18 years? Yep. And Peterson wants to be recognized as the father after doing nothing for 18 years? That's the idea? Marcus sat down beside me. You're gonna fight this, right? I looked at the grandfather's hammer on my belt, at those 5 words that had defined my family for 70 years. Yeah, I'm gonna fight. Good, because this is bullshit. I need to talk to a lawyer, someone who knows family law. Jenny Cho, she handled my divorce. She's tough. Want me to call her? Yeah. Marcus pulled out his phone, made the call, set up a meeting for that afternoon. What are you gonna do in the meantime? He asked. Finish this job, then figure out the rest. You keep saying that because it's all I've got. That evening, I went back to Mom's house, back to the box with the letters and journal. I needed to understand everything before I walked into a lawyer's office. I read through Dad's journal again, found an entry from when he came back from Vietnam. First day back stateside. Been thinking about what I learned over there, about trust. In the jungle, trust means life or death. You can't build trust on lies. If your buddy says the path is clear, it's got to be clear. If you say you've got someone's six, you'd better have it. Lies get people killed. Same applies back here, just slower. You can't build a life on lies. Can't build a marriage, can't build a family, can't build a business. Pour your foundation on sand, and everything collapses eventually. Another entry from when I was a teenager. Taught Thomas about building codes today. Explained that they're not just bureaucracy, they're lessons written in blood. Every code exists because something failed, someone got hurt, someone died. He asked why we can't just build the way we want. I said, because we build for other people, not just ourselves. We build to last. That means doing it right, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. That's integrity. I closed the journal, sat in the quiet house. My father had lived by a code, truth, integrity, building things that lasted. Mom had tried to deviate from it, to protect me, she said. But protection built on lies isn't protection, it's just delayed pain. Sarah had lived by her own code, self-preservation, comfort, whatever kept her life intact. And me? I'd been trying to live by Dad's code, but I'd been failing, running away, hiding at job sites, not fighting for Jake the way I should have been. If I was going to honor my father's legacy, if I was going to make the hammer mean something, I needed to fight, not with anger or revenge, but with truth. I needed to stand up in court and say, yes, Jake is my son, not by blood, by choice, by 18 years of love, by every sacrifice, every lesson, every moment. And if Sarah and Peterson wanted to fight that, fine. We'd see who built something that lasted. Over the next week, things happened fast. I met with Jenny Cho. She was sharp, no nonsense, exactly what I needed. She reviewed the papers, took notes, asked hard questions. Do you want custody? She asked. He's 18. He doesn't need custody. But Peterson is asking for it, symbolic probably, trying to establish parental rights. If you don't contest, you're basically saying you agree he's the father, and you're not. I am the father. I've been his father for 18 years. Then we fight, but I need to warn you, biology matters in court. We'll need character witnesses, people who can speak to your relationship with Jake, people who can testify that you've been a father in every meaningful way. I've got people. Good. We'll also need to address the child support claim. It's weak. No judge is going to make you reimburse them for voluntarily supporting a child you believed was yours. But we need to be prepared for them to paint you as vindictive. How? They'll say you're abandoning Jake because of the DNA test, that you only loved him when you thought he was yours, that you're punishing an innocent kid. I thought of Betty Marsh at the hardware store, the waitress at the diner, Linda's accusations. They're already saying that. Then we counter it. We show that you love Jake, that you've always loved Jake, that this is about truth, not revenge. It is. She studied me. You're a builder, right? Yeah. Then build me a case. Show me what you've built with Jake over 18 years. Photos, documents, testimony. Build me something I can present to a judge. I thought of Dad's journal, of the hammer, of 100 Saturday mornings in the workshop. I can do that. Rachel started bringing Ethan by the job site regularly. At first it was just weekend mornings, then weekday afternoons after school. The kid was hungry to learn, asking questions, trying techniques, making mistakes, and trying again. It reminded me of Jake, the good parts, before everything got complicated. One afternoon, Rachel stayed after Ethan went home with a friend, helped me clean up the workspace. You're good with him, she said. He's a good kid. He's been having a hard time, with father figures, I mean. Doesn't trust easily. I get that. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Pastor Grant mentioned you're going through something with your son. Yeah, I'm sorry, that must be hard. It's complicated. Most important things are. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She had kind eyes, tired, like she'd been through something difficult, but kind. Your husband, I said. How long ago? 3 years, cancer, slow and awful. By the end, he was ready to go. We both were. I'm sorry. Me too, but we're figuring it out. Ethan and I, building something new. Building something new? The phrase stuck with me. Is that what you're doing? She asked. Building something new? Trying to. Don't know if I'm any good at it yet. You're teaching my son carpentry. You finished that reading nook in half the time it should have taken. You show up every day, even when I can tell you'd rather be anywhere else. I think you're better at it than you give yourself credit for." I didn't know what to say to that. She handed me a rag. "Ethan asked if you could teach him to make a birdhouse. For me, for Mother's Day. Mother's Day is next month." "I know. He wants to start early, wants to get it perfect." I smiled. "Miller men measure twice, cut once. Your son's learning well." "Will you help him?" "Yeah, I'll help him." That Saturday, Ethan came by at 8 a.m. sharp. I had plans drawn up for a simple birdhouse. Showed him how to read the measurements, how to mark the wood, how to cut straight lines. We worked for 3 hours. He was meticulous, careful, asked questions when he didn't understand, didn't get frustrated when things went wrong. Halfway through, he said, "Mr. Miller, how come you know so much?" "My dad taught me, and his dad taught him." I wish my dad could have taught me stuff. I set down the drill. "What do you remember about him?" "He read to me every night, even when he was sick, even when he was so tired he could barely hold the book. He said stories are important, that they help us understand the world. He was right. Do you think he'd be okay with you teaching me about building and stuff?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about my own father, about the lessons he'd taught me, about the journal full of wisdom I was only now beginning to understand. "Yeah, buddy, I think he'd be real happy about that." Ethan smiled, went back to work. When we finished the frame of the birdhouse, still needed paint and assembly, I showed him the hammer, grandfather's hammer. "This was my grandfather's," I said, "then my dad's, now mine. It's old. It's older than me. See this?" I pointed to the inscription, "We build to last." That's the Miller family motto. What's a motto? It's like a rule you live by, a reminder of what's important. What does it mean? We build to last? It means when we make something, we make it right. We don't take shortcuts. We use good materials. We take our time. We build things that'll be here long after we're gone. Like what? Like the town hall. My grandfather built that in 1965, still standing. Like the library. My dad built that. Like your birdhouse. If we do it right, that'll last for years. Ethan looked at the hammer with new respect. "Can I hold it?" I passed it to him. He held it carefully, reverently. "Someday," I said, "when you're older, you'll teach someone else. That's how it works. Knowledge gets passed down." "Will you teach me everything?" I thought about Jake, about Peterson, about the court date coming up in 2 weeks. "I'll teach you everything I can." That night, I got a text from Jake. "Peterson's lawyer called. They want me to testify, to say you've been a bad dad since you found out." My stomach dropped. Me. "Are you going to?" Long pause. 3 dots appearing and disappearing. Jake. "I don't know. Mom's really pushing. Says it's important for their case." Me. "What do you think?" Jake. "I think it's messed up. All of it." Me. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You're 18. You get to choose." Jake. "That's the problem. I don't know what to choose." I wanted to tell him, choose me. Choose truth. Choose the man who drove you to practice for 6 years, who taught you to work hard, who loved you unconditionally. But I couldn't say that, because family isn't about forcing choices. It's about letting people decide who they want to be. Me. "Whatever you decide, I'll still love you. That doesn't change." Jake. "Promise?" Me. "Promise." 2 days before the court hearing, Rachel asked if I wanted to come to dinner. Nothing fancy, she said. Just her and Ethan and some pasta. I almost said no. I had prep to do, documents to review, testimony to practice. But something in her voice made me say yes. Her house was small but warm. Lots of books, photos of her late husband, kid drawings on the fridge. It felt like a home. Ethan was excited to see me, showed me his homework, his latest Lego creation, a drawing he'd made of the birdhouse we were building. Dinner was easy, comfortable. We talked about normal things, school, work, the community center opening next week. Nobody mentioned my divorce or the court hearing or the fact that my life was falling apart. It felt like breathing after being underwater. After Ethan went to bed, Rachel and I sat on the porch with coffee. "Thank you for this," I said. "I needed normal." "You're welcome. Ethan needed it too. He's been happier these last few weeks than he's been in years." "Because of the building?" "Because of you. He's been missing having a man around who isn't trying to replace his dad. You're teaching him without expecting anything back. That matters." I didn't know what to say. "The court thing," she said carefully. "How are you feeling about it?" "Terrified." "Want to talk about it?" And I did. I told her everything about the will reading, the DNA test, Sarah's affair, Peterson showing up, Jake being torn in half, about my father's journal and my mother's lies and the hammer and the motto, and feeling like I was failing everyone. She listened, didn't interrupt, just listened. When I finished, she said, "Do you regret it, raising Jake?" "No, never, even knowing he's my son, in every way that matters." "Then say that tomorrow. Say exactly that." "What if it's not enough?" "Then you'll know you told the truth, and you'll rebuild, like you always do." She paused. "You're a builder, Thomas. That's what you do. You take raw materials and turn them into something lasting. This is just another project, harder than most, but you'll figure it out." I wanted to believe her. The courthouse was packed. Small town, big drama. Everyone wanted to see how it would play out. I wore my one good suit. Jenny Cho met me on the steps. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Nervous means you care. Come on." Inside, I saw Sarah and Peterson sitting with their lawyer. A slick guy from the city, expensive suit, confident smile. Sarah looked small beside him, guilty and defiant at the same time. Jake was there too. He had to be. Sitting in the gallery between Pastor Grant and Marcus. He wouldn't look at me. Judge Carol Henderson presided. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. I'd worked on her house renovation 5 years ago. She'd been fair then. I hoped she'd be fair now. Peterson's lawyer went first. Painted a picture of a man denied his rights, a father who never knew his son, a biological bond that trumped all else. "Mr. Peterson only recently discovered he had a son," the lawyer said. "For 18 years, he was deprived of his parental rights because the Miller family concealed DNA evidence. Thomas Miller benefited from raising Jake, claimed him as his own, and now, out of spite, wants to deny Mr. Peterson his rightful relationship." It was a good story, well told. Mostly true if you ignored the parts about Peterson being Jake's teacher, about the affair, about 18 years of absence. Then Sarah testified. "I made a mistake," she said, crying softly. 20 years ago, I was young, confused, scared. When Dorothy offered to hide the test results, I thought it was protecting everyone. Thomas was such a good father. Jake was happy. I didn't want to destroy that. Peterson's lawyer. "And when did you tell Mr. Peterson that Jake was his son?" 3 months ago, after Dorothy's will reading. I thought Thomas deserved to know the truth, and David deserved to know his son. How has Thomas reacted? He's been cold, distant. He moved out, stopped coming to Jake's games, stopped the Saturday woodworking they used to do. It's like he stopped loving Jake the moment he found out about the DNA. I gripped the table. Jenny put her hand on my arm. "Stay calm." "That's not true," I muttered. "I know. You'll get your turn." Peterson testified next, talked about his shock, his desire to connect with Jake, his belief that biology mattered. "Jake is my son," he said. "I didn't know for 18 years, but I know now, and I want to be his father. Thomas Miller had that privilege. Now it's my turn." The judge asked, "Mr. Peterson, were you aware of your relationship with Sarah Miller while Jake was a student?" "Jake wasn't in my class at the time, but he was a student at the school where you taught." "Yes." "And you were his teacher the year prior?" "Yes." "Did that create any ethical concerns for you?" Peterson shifted. "In retrospect, yes. But at the time, Sarah and I believed we were acting appropriately." The judge made a note. Didn't look impressed. Then it was our turn. Jenny started with character witnesses. Pastor Grant testified about my community work, my integrity, my dedication to Jake. Marcus testified about Saturday practices, about me coaching Little League for 6 years, about the time I drove 8 hours round trip for an away game. Then Jenny called me. I sat in the witness box, hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. "Mr. Miller," Jenny said, "when did you learn Jake wasn't your biological son?" 3 months ago, at my mother's will reading." "How did that feel?" "Like my entire history had been rewritten. Every memory, every moment with Jake. I had to look at it all differently." "Do you love Jake?" "Yes, always have, always will." Even knowing he's not biologically yours? Biology is science. Love is choice. I choose Jake. Every day. Peterson's lawyer cross-examined. If you love him so much, why did you move out? Because I was lied to by my wife and my mother. I needed space to process that betrayal. That doesn't mean I stopped loving my son. You stopped attending his games. I attended his graduation. I've answered every text. I've told him repeatedly that I love him. But you didn't fight for custody. He's 18. He doesn't need custody. He needs to know he's loved, and I've told him that. Convenient, now that you know he's not yours. He is mine. My voice rose. Jenny touched my arm, but I kept going. Not by blood, by 18 years of love, sacrifice, and showing up. That's what makes someone a father. The lawyer tried to push more, but Jenny objected. The judge sustained. Then Jenny asked, "Mr. Miller, I see you brought something to court. Would you like to explain?" I pulled out the hammer, held it up. This hammer belonged to my grandfather. He was a carpenter. He built the town hall in 1965, the building we're sitting in right now. He passed it to my father, who built the library. My father passed it to me. On it, it says, "We build to last." I looked at the judge, at Jake, at everyone. That's not just about buildings. It's about integrity, about building your life on truth, not lies. My grandfather knew that. My father knew that. They taught me. I didn't know Jake wasn't my biological son, but I know now. And I'm here because I want to keep building a relationship with him. Not because I have to, because I choose to. I turned to Peterson. He wants rights because of biology. Sarah wants to avoid consequences for her deception. I just want my son to know he's loved, by me, always. The judge asked Jake to approach. "Jake," she said gently, "you're 18. You're legally an adult, but this affects you most. I'd like to hear from you." Jake stood, walked to the front. He looked terrified. "Your Honor, He paused. "I don't know what to say. Just be honest." Jake took a breath. "Thomas, my dad, he drove me to football practice 6 days a week for 6 years. He never missed a game until 3 months ago. He taught me to work hard, to be honest, to finish what I start. He taught me how to be a man." He glanced at Peterson. "David, Mr. Peterson, he seems like a nice guy, but he's a stranger who happens to have my DNA, and I don't know how to have a father I just met." He looked at Sarah. "Mom lied to everyone. I'm still processing that." Then he looked at me. Our eyes met. "The truth is, I don't care about DNA. I care about who was there, and Dad was there, every single day. He's my dad. He's always been my dad, and I want him to stay my dad." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Sarah started crying. Peterson sat frozen. Judge Henderson banged her gavel. "Order." Pastor Grant stood. "Your Honor, may I speak?" "This is irregular, but go ahead. I've known Thomas Miller his whole life. 3 generations of Millers have built this town. The church hall, the parish house, the community center. Thomas finished that center while his life was falling apart, because he gave his word. He's a man of integrity, and that boy loves him. That should be all that matters." Marcus stood next. "Your Honor, Thomas Miller is the best man I know. He's not here for money or revenge. He's here for his son." Then Rachel stood. I hadn't known she was there. "Your Honor, I'm Rachel Bennett. I've only known Thomas 3 months, but in that time, I've watched him teach my son woodworking, make him feel valued, show him what a good man looks like. That's the kind of father Jake needs." The judge listened, made notes. Then she spoke. "I've heard enough. Here's my ruling." The room went silent. "Mr. Peterson, you have biological rights, but you forfeited them through inaction. You suspected Jake was yours but didn't pursue it. You waited until it was convenient. That's not fatherhood." Peterson's face went red. "Mrs. Miller, your claim for back child support is denied. You deceived Mr. Miller. He owes you nothing. In fact, if I were inclined, I'd consider sanctions for filing a frivolous claim." "Don't test me." Sarah's lawyer started to object. The judge silenced him with a look. "Mr. Thomas Miller, Jake is legally an adult, but for the record, you are his father in every way that matters. No court can change that." She looked at Jake. "Jake, you're free to have relationships with whomever you choose, but I'm granting Thomas Miller legal standing as your parent of record for any future medical, educational, or legal purposes, should you consent." I consent, Jake said immediately. Then we're done here. The gavel came down. Outside, on the courthouse steps, Jake and I stood in the sun. Dad, I'm sorry for everything. You have nothing to be sorry for. I should have said something sooner, should have told Mom and Peterson to stop. You were caught in the middle. That's not your fault. What happens now? Now you go to Penn State, you play football, you build your life, and we're good, you and me? We're better than good. We're family. We hugged, both of us crying, both of us holding on. Peterson approached, defeated. Jake, I want you to know, I didn't mean for it to go like this. Jake pulled away from me, looked at Peterson. I'm sure you didn't, but it did. Maybe we could still get to know each other. Maybe, someday, but not now. Peterson left. Sarah tried to approach. I stepped between them. Sarah, don't. Jake, honey, Mom, I love you, but I'm staying with Dad tonight. She left, crying. Rachel and Ethan came over. Ethan hugged my waist. Mr. Miller, did you win? I ruffled his hair. Yeah, buddy, I won. Good. Can we finish the birdhouse tomorrow? I laughed. Yeah, we can. Jake looked at them, at me, understanding dawning. Rachel and Ethan, right? Yeah. He smiled, small but real. Nice to meet you both, officially. 6 months later, everything was different. Saturday morning, my workshop, golden fall light through the windows. I was working on a bookshelf for Rachel's classroom. Ethan was beside me, sanding boards. Rachel was in the doorway with coffee, watching and smiling. A truck pulled up. Jake, home from Penn State for fall break. He walked in. Smells like sawdust. Smells like home. Hey son, how was the drive? Long, but worth it. He paused. I've been craving Grandma Dorothy's cinnamon rolls. Rachel stepped forward. I made a batch this morning. Your dad walked me through the recipe. Jake's eyes got wet. You learned Grandma's recipe? Your dad said it was a family thing, figured it should stay in the family. Yeah, it should. Jake met Ethan properly. They talked about carpentry, about football, about building things. Natural, easy. Want to help with the bookshelf? I asked Jake. Absolutely. The three of us worked together, teaching, learning, laughing. Rachel brought the cinnamon rolls. We took a break, ate together, talked about nothing important. After, I went to the locked cabinet, pulled out the hammer. Jake, come here. He came over, saw the hammer. Grandpa's hammer. Yeah, and now it's yours. Dad, I can't. You can. You're a Miller. Maybe not by blood, but by choice. By 18 years. By showing up when you could have walked away. I placed it in his hands. This hammer builds things that last, and so do you. He was crying. Are you sure? I'm sure. He read the inscription aloud. We build to last. Grandpa's motto. And yours, and maybe someday Ethan's too. Ethan looked up. Really? Family isn't a straight line, buddy. It's a circle, and we're building it together. We finished the bookshelf, all four of us working as a team. Natural rhythm, belonging. That evening, we had dinner at Rachel's house. Simple meal, lots of laughter. Jake fit right in. Later, Jake and I sat on the porch with coffee. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about how things could have been different, if you'd known earlier? Sometimes, but I don't regret raising you. Not a single day. Even the hard parts? Even those. They made us who we are. I like who we are. Me too. Later that night, I stood in my workshop alone, looked at the bookshelf we'd built, started drafting plans for a new project, an addition to Rachel's house. I thought about the last 6 months, about the court battle, the pain, the rebuilding, about Rachel and Ethan, about Jake coming home, about choosing to build something real instead of protecting something false. 6 months ago, I sat in an attorney's office and learned my son wasn't mine by blood. 6 months ago, I thought my family was destroyed. I thought everything I'd built was on a foundation of lies. Turns out, I was wrong. Family isn't about who made you. It's about who shows up, who teaches you to hammer a nail straight, who drives you to practice even when they're exhausted, who chooses you every single day. My grandfather built the town hall. My father built the library. I've built homes, workshops, a community center. But the thing I'm most proud of building? This. A family that chose each other. My father used to say, we build to last. He meant buildings. But he also meant something bigger. He meant integrity, truth, love that doesn't quit. Jake is my son, not because of biology, because I chose him, and he chose me back. Ethan is becoming family too, and Rachel. We're building something together, something that'll last long after I'm gone. Someone once told me, you can't build on lies. They were right. But here's what they didn't say. You can build on truth, on choice, on showing up when it's hard. I picked up a piece of scrap wood, carved 5 words into it with the chisel. We build to last, hung it on the workshop wall. We build to last. That's not just my family's motto anymore. It's my promise to Jake, to Ethan, to Rachel, to every person who chooses to be part of something real. I turned off the workshop light, walked toward the house where Rachel, Jake, and Ethan were visible through the window, laughing together. Blood doesn't make you family. Building does. And we built something beautiful.